Good evening. It is Thursday, March 21st, the third installment of My Culture War, Raising a Son to be a Man. I'm going to speak on what I know. I know my son, and he's an only child. I expect much of what I'm going to talk about will apply to raising girls, um, but I think mostly, or I think almost all of it will apply in general to raising sons, and maybe most will also apply to girls. So children in general, but I'm confident that what I'm going to talk about will apply to my son and especially his generation, the current generation around his age in cities. Now he's an only child, and he's growing up in a city. That's relevant um, because I think physicality is especially important. Being um, having physicality a part of his rearing, a focus when for boys and with an only child, he doesn't have the siblings to roughhouse with. Being in a city, doesn't have the kind of countryside shenanigans that kids can get up to in the country. I grew up in like the rainforest of the Big Island of Hawaii, so I was out in the jungle, kind of. And then like before that, I was in Northern California, and like I had a lot of adventurous exploits of when I was a kid that my son does. It's just more contained in a city, and so I need to. There's advantages, but I need to take a more proactive role in the rearing of him and developing that that maturity, that physical maturity. And I'm on a clock because I need to do this before he becomes a teenager. And this is key, I think, to raising a son, especially, is you need to get them mature in a number of ways that, like, once they become a teenager, if you haven't worked on this, you haven't developed it, it becomes a very uphill battle. Um, the physicality development and just in general giving them responsibilities is um, and I draw on a little bit of what Jordan Peterson has talked about um, for I think more for adults, but I think he has mentioned about raising children. Give them as much responsibility as they can handle, or like can really push that boundary. Um, and there's I've heard talked of, was it like bulldozering for parenting, where you just bulldoze or all obstacles, and it really comes back to haunt parents, because without obstacles and challenges to overcome, children in general, boys and girls, they don't develop the survival. They don't mature like they need to. Like where I think of autoimmune diseases that my very loose understanding is there's something about dealing with, let's say, dirt and just filth. The body evolved to deal with difficulty with dirt and filth, and without those things, the body kind of attacks itself in a way. Um, or if you don't have like the stress of survival in your life, maybe you just find other reasons to be really stressed out, um, and that the natural stresses of starvation, like then there's fasting that can be really healthy, or going into a sauna where it's really hot, or doing like cold therapy, like these stresses, certain stresses on the body, like environmental stresses, have great benefits. Like we're designed to operate with stresses. We're not great, I think, with like those emotional stresses where there's no solution, where somebody's mad at us and no matter what we say, there's just no way out. I think we operate really well when we have a shelter to build, we have firewood to cut, we have an animal to kill, um, and we have a meal to prepare, like just these deal with the basic necessities and then relax and chit chat and talk about philosophy and whatnot. Talk about those leisure exploits. So I see my son immersed in a sea of oversensitivity I respond to it. So I think be aware of the environment that your son is in, your son or daughter, your child is in. How is the elementary school different from the one that you attended? How much has the generation that you're a part of differ from the one that he or she is a part of? And in my case, there's a fear of children being out by themselves, especially in the city. There's a fear of, I guess it's a fear of any kind of physicality, any kind of physical contact with kids or between kids, and it's excessive. So I have my son attend jiu-jitsu. I proactively make him. I will drag him. I will say he will not want to go, and I'll say, okay, I'm going to physically drag you there. I'm going to make you go. You do not have a choice. So there's an expectation now that we listen to our kids. And I think that's a reasonable expectation. But I am not going to do that all the time. I think we may, there's such a thing as listening to your kids too much. I think there's such a thing as caring about what your kids want too much. They aren't an adult. You don't have to respect what they want. You can just tell them to do something, and you can make them do it because that's what you've decided is good for them. It's okay sometimes to be iron, and especially if it's balanced against the softness that is, I think, he's swimming through the, I don't know. I think you got to consider the elements, the family, the culture, and the location, and work on a balance, basically. And living in Portland, Oregon, in the United States, in year 2019, with a 9-year-old boy, there's a lot of imbalance. There's a culture war going on, and I got to teach my son that free speech matters, that sticks and stones may break his bones, but words will never hurt him. And words are not violence, like little things like that. It's just a word. And if I was a kid, or back when I was a kid, maybe it wouldn't be good for my father to say that to me, because other people, I would have heard that from another source, and so maybe it would have been better for him to say, you need to be careful what you say, because that's going to cause a problem. And I do that with Yuri too a little bit, but it's I need him to be emotionally sound and just be a little street smart, a little tough before it becomes a teenager, before those hormones get in there, and then all hope is lost. He just gets, because there's this kind of Indian summer of semi-adulthood at I think around 9 years old, where they've been around enough, their brain's working pretty well, and they haven't gotten that slush of hormones from the teenagers. So they can have some pretty adult conversations, and I think it's the perfect time to pile on responsibility, to get them thinking about who they really want to be, what they want to do. Just have them get a kind of seeds of purpose, enabling future possibilities for them. Get that deep into their foundation foundational selves before the teenage years hits. I think this is essential to making life a lot easier once they become teenagers. So it's not such an uphill battle that um, and with the distraction, the epic distraction of screen time, like how can we as parents possibly combat the addictiveness of screen time? And I think purpose is key. And if we wait until they're a teenager to take on that battle, we're going to lose. And it's just, you have to lay down the bricks and not just say, hey, you cannot do screen time unless you do this and this. And like, I think building up a future that they look forward to. It's almost like, talking about college and what they're going to do as an adult, it's a bit excessive maybe, or a bit like early for a 9-year-old, but for Yuri, getting him thinking about little ways to make money. Like he's kind of, I do teaching English, so he's a teacher's assistant. Or I had him cut my hair, which, there's the little thumbnail, and he made a little money that way. So children are capable of more than we think they are in general, I think. I think we just take it too easy, especially now when we're hypersensitive with this culture. Children are capable of more. Challenge them before the sloth, the hormonal sloth slush takes over, and they just go down for the count for the 6 years of being a teenager plus, and you'll have success. So that's the takeaway. I think 7 years old, once upon a time, was when children would go to work at a trade, and I think that was healthy. I think, on the balance, it was healthy for a 7-year-old to be doing something that they took pride in. Of course, it could be abused. I just mean, like, it takes a village to raise a child. That, giving children, especially around like 7 to 9, 7 to 10, it's a great time to give them a purpose, to get them thinking of doing something that they can be proud of. And be careful, especially with boys, of being verbally focused. Sometimes just be physical. Just communicate physically and let them run the hounds, as they say. Treat boys like dogs, and let them off the leash, let them run around, burn themselves out, and maybe, find that moment when they're a little burnout to have a deep conversation. Maybe while they're, like with my son, we're walking from the bus stop to jiu-jitsu or something like that. Pick a good moment. Don't force it when at the end of the day and they're sitting on the couch. Where is he? Maybe that's just like, I'm not going to force a deep conversation right now. He's about to be told that he must go to bed, and oh my God, it's just after 8:30. He needs to go to bed because tomorrow is school, right, Yuri? You need to go to bed now. I'm going to count down to 0, and if I get to 0, you know what I'm going to do to your tablet? 5, 4, 3. Okay, Yuri. 2, 1, 0. Okay.